Hello, my name is Abraham Klein, and if you know me, you know that I've spent a significant amount of time in the hospital. This is not to say that this makes me special or superior to anybody because I've spent a lot of time in the hospital, and this is not to say that there aren't other people who have spent more time. I realize there's a lot of other people who spent more time in the hospital than me and have had harder times and more complicated experiences than I have. But I think I have spent enough time in the hospital to garner some experience with what it's like in there. And one of the best parts, if I could say, best parts about being in the hospital, because there's a lot of bad that comes with being in the hospital, but there's also some good. And one of the best parts about being in the hospital is when somebody visits you. All right, that is one of the best parts of being in the hospital is when somebody visits you. And I made up a list of things to remember when visiting people in the hospital, because after all, there's some rules that come with it. And so my hope is that we'll take this list and we'll learn some things from it, and that at the end we will be much better people for it. Am I right? All right. So when it comes to visiting people, some things to remember. Here's a list. Number one, visit them. Yeah. That's probably the most important one, because if you don't visit them, the rest of this really doesn't mean anything. But yeah, don't just talk about visiting them. Don't be the person that's always like, oh yeah, I gotta get there and visit you and stuff, but then you never do. And more specifically, this list is about people who spend lengthy times in the hospital. If you're there for a night, I understand. Somebody might not be able to make it to visit. You might not be able to make to visit a person if they're only there for one night or 2 nights or 3 nights. But obviously, if they're in there for a lengthy stay, for a couple of weeks or something like that, then going to visit them is very important, and it definitely lifts their spirits. And so, yeah, definitely visit them. Definitely visit them. Number two, try to keep in touch outside of the hospital. And again, don't just keep in touch outside, also go to visit them. But try to keep in touch outside the hospital too. Now, when I was in the hospital, it wasn't always easy to get a hold of me. And outside the hospital, it's not always easy to get a hold of me. But that's here, neither here nor there. But when they're in the hospital, try to keep in touch with them. If you can't make it, maybe send them a text message. Maybe give them a call every once in a while. More importantly, probably send them a text message, especially if they're, like on a ventilator and they can't talk, because otherwise talking on the phone is literally impossible. But if you can, send them a message, maybe an email, some message on social media if you're into that, that kind of stuff goes a long, long way, and it'll definitely make them happy. Either whether it's sending them a message, or giving them a phone call, maybe sending them a card or something like that, which we'll get into in a moment. Definitely goes a long, long way, and definitely can help lift their spirits. Number three, again, this goes along with what we were just talking about. Send or bring a gift. Something as small as a card can brighten a person's day in the hospital. And this is so true, because prior to being in the hospital, I really didn't care about cards. I was glad to get them. It was nice. 21st birthday, I was happy to get cards. My graduation, I was happy to get cards. It was nice to see that people were thinking of me. But really, obviously I cared a lot more about the money that came with it. Amen. But once I was in the hospital and I was in there for a long period of time, I can't tell you how much a card, just a simple card sent to me, even if somebody, wrote their name on a piece of paper and gave it to me, it would just brighten my day. And just to know that they were thinking of me and doing, in fact, I remember church in South Carolina, Faith Baptist Church, Waterboro, South Carolina. They sent me like a whole package of like little cards that their Sunday school class and their academy made up for me. It was just so sweet and adorable, and I really liked it. And yeah, definitely. So when a person's in the hospital, definitely do something like that. And I would say the most consistent people were a couple by the name of Pastor Andy and Mrs. Apioke, who, I don't remember how often it was, but I believe it was at least every month, maybe even more frequently than that, would send me a card. And it was nice. And again, it definitely would brighten my day on those lonely, lonely days when sometimes I realized not everybody can visit, not everybody could be there. And to be able to get a card on those days was just lovely. Lovely, lovely, lovely. Number 4, if they need anything before you leave, and this is not necessarily, do you need me to bring anything? That's nice. Yeah, okay. But anything as simple as, adjusting their blanket, adjusting their pillow, fluffing their pillow. A lot of pillow stuff, definitely. Helping them get comfortable in their bed, moving their tray over, bringing something over to their bed for them to use. Anything like that is because, a lot of times when you push the call bell, the nurse can't come there right away. And to simply call for the nurse to fluff your pillow, you hope that you have more than just that to ask for a nurse. So if you as a friend can do something as simple as helping them out with something before they leave, I'm not talking about like helping them go to the bathroom or anything like that. That'd be a little bit weird. But anything simple like again, fluffing the pillow, adjusting their blankets, moving their tray over, stuff like that, is definitely appreciated. And definitely, if you want to ask if they want something when you come back, like bring them a snack or a drink or something that they can't get in the hospital, I'm sure is always appreciated. Definitely always welcomed by those in the hospital. Number 5, if they're not allowed to eat or drink, and this is very key, very important, do not eat or drink in front of them. And I realize everybody's different, but there's nothing that makes you more hungry or thirsty than when you're lying there, with a feeding tube inside you, or maybe you don't have a feeding tube inside you, and you're just not allowed to eat or drink for several days, and somebody comes in with a scrumptious cup of some icy, iced tea or something like that, and they're just slurping away and talking to you. It's, yep, I'm so sympathetic of your problems, as they drink away of that scrumptious iced tea. And, you're just lying there like, and so, don't do that kind of stuff. I mean, or if nothing else, at least ask. If I'm in a situation like that, and I'm visiting somebody, and I have a drink, I like to go out of the room real quick, and then I'll come back in. Or eat before you come, or something like that. Because if they can't eat, there's nothing that really makes you want to eat more than seeing somebody else eat. So try to be considerate in that way. Number 6, do not say how lucky they must be to get to sleep all day. And here's why. Because when you're in the hospital, you don't really get to sleep all day. When people come in, a lot of times, you will be sleeping. You know why? Because at midnight, at 1, at 2, at 3, at 4, at 5 in the morning, constantly there's somebody coming in trying, and maybe it's not every hour on the hour, definitely feels like it, but there's always somebody coming in all hours of the night trying to wake you up. And of course there's a lot of noise going on, so it's hard to get back to sleep. And it's a lot of waking up and going to sleep, and believe me, it'll affect you once you get out of the hospital a lot of times too, where you're finally home, you find yourself waking up all hours of the night. It's awful. So don't tell them how lucky they are. I remember actually a nurse, they came in, and I was just so tired one morning that I didn't even eat breakfast. I didn't even wait for breakfast, and I just said, I need to sleep today. So I slept till like 10 o'clock that morning. And the nurse said, boy, you must be lucky to get to sleep in all day. And I said, I'll trade places with you. You can be the sick one, I'll be the healthy one. And she didn't really, appreciate that. But anyway, so yeah, don't say how lucky they are. Maybe we are lucky. Who cares? Okay? It's the hospital. We're stuck in the hospital. Don't say how lucky we are to sleep all day, because we really don't get to sleep all day. Number 7, do not be a phantom. Okay? It's one thing to say, hey, I visited. It's another thing to say that you visited and then you didn't spend any time with them. I don't know what's so interesting about the hospital. Obviously I spent a lot of time in there, but I don't really know what is so fun about going to a hospital that a person goes to visit somebody and then like immediately are off doing other things while they're in the hospital. If you're going to go visit somebody, go visit somebody. Don't walk in for 5 minutes and then spend the rest of your time visiting the gift shop and going to the cafeteria and flirting with the nurses and all other sorts of stuff. I mean, come on. I mean, if you're going to go visit somebody, visit them. Don't be a phantom, so to speak. So, don't check everything else in the hospital. Visit the person. And we're getting close. We got a couple more. Number 8, do not complain about your stay in the hospital. Do not compare your stay in the hospital I'm really messing this up. Do not compare their stay in the hospital, to the time you went to the ER to get an antibiotic for a cold. Obviously, if a person is spending a long period of time in the hospital, and you come in and you're like, oh yeah, I remember that time I spent, 4 hours in the hospital. I know exactly how you feel. Obviously, I mean, again, everybody's situation is different, and I understand. Maybe you went in for 4 hours and it was the most horrifying experience, and I understand that can happen. I'm definitely not downplaying that, but to compare something like that to being in the hospital, to a person who almost loses their life in the hospital, or had some major surgery done in the hospital, or something like that, to I went to the hospital and they pulled a splinter out of my foot. It's not really the same. But yeah, to each their own. If you want to talk about that, by all means. Number 9, let's not spend all of our time on negative stuff. It's bad enough being in the hospital. But to spend all of our time just complaining about everything that's going on in the world, it's just not the right atmosphere. I mean, if you haven't noticed, hospitals are pretty gloomy. I don't know why, but whoever decorates them has no desire to make those places very welcome. And I guess, maybe they don't want people to stay there. I wouldn't want people to stay there. I mean, I want people to be well. But hey, I mean, come on, we got to stay there. At least they can do is maybe at least paint their walls. I don't know. But, let's not complain the whole time. That's not to say that we can't have deep, long, philosophical conversations. But let's not spend all of our time on negativity. Let's try to keep the atmosphere a little bit more positive every once in a while. Because, believe me, it gets pretty gloomy. And to just add more negativity on it, it's just not worth it. And number 10, and this is probably the most important one, don't feel as though you have to walk on eggshells when you're around us, okay? This idea that, oh my, I can't necessarily empathize with them because I've not been through what they've been through. Who cares? The fact that you're there and the fact that you're spending time with us is enough. And yeah, even if you break a bunch of these rules on here, it's okay. The fact that you took the time out of your day to come visit a person in the hospital is the most important one. And if hey, say you come in and you're drinking in front of them or eating in front of them, and they're like, hey, could you not do that? Okay, great. Stop drinking or eating in front of them. That's fine. So you messed up. That's okay. Don't feel as though, you're the worst person in the world because of some little mistake you made. The most important thing is that you came and visited. Because believe me, that means the world to a person who's in the hospital. As somebody who's spent a lot of time in the hospital, there's nothing that can brighten a gloomy day like seeing somebody walk into that door and say, hey, I'm here to visit you. Yeah, because they all do that when they want. They're like, hey, please don't be, indecent or anything. Because, you never know what's going to happen when you walk into a hospital room. But, yeah, so that's the most important thing. It's just the fact that you're there. And it kind of goes with number 1. Just come and visit. That's all that matters. And you'll definitely brighten a person's day. And maybe they're having a really bad day, and maybe they don't look very happy, but believe me, they are. They're happy to see you, and they want company, because believe me, it gets really lonely in the hospital. And so that's a list. It's it was a long video, but I hope you got through it, and I hope that you like it, and I hope it's been a nice educational experience for all of us. Anyway, thank you for watching. You have a great day.